you fear, you don't want to, you're not an idiot, I'm not an idiot. And so immediately the self-repair thing is you shout something back, even louder perhaps. And on its own level it works, because you feel a little bit better. The damage has been repaired. You've shouted back and it's been patched up. Okay. The self is intact again, and so you drive on. And this is a little example. And how often do things like that happen through criticism, somebody telling you this or that, you're not, and then occasionally you get the opposite, you lap it up, you say, you are so good, you're so great. The world may tell you that for a little while, until it changes its mind. But to observe the automatic self-repair mechanism that immediately come into place. And that, of course, can even degenerate in very unconscious people. In other words, people who are very much complete absence of a witnessing presence, that need to be right. In very unconscious people, and there are many on this planet still, can degenerate into physical violence. Physical violence, even between nations, is the need to be right and the other to be wrong. Or when you're driving, you can see it as a phenomenon. I don't know if it happens in India, probably not, but in the West, road rage, where it's not confined to a physical shouting match. They actually get out of their cars and start physical violence. But it's simply a continuation of the self-repair mechanism. And so the final triumph in a very, very unconscious person, and there are many, is you've killed the other person. The self is now, the fiction, the illusion of self is now totally repaired. And then they put you in prison. But at least you've triumphed as the self. And at that moment, when you're engaged in automatic and unconscious self-repair, you would go to prison for the rest of your life just to triumph in that moment. It's all worth it, says the self. But then life is very generous. It then allows you 50 years of spiritual practice in the prison cell. So when you are talking to people, watch that, whether there's identification with mental positions, defensiveness in yourself, and then the enormous freedom comes when you don't need to defend anymore, that the otherwise unconscious need to defend your sense of self is relinquished. And then, to go back to the simple example, somebody shouts, "You idiot," when you are driving, and you look, and you drive on. There's nothing to repair. And then he'll shout again because he thinks you're deaf. And that's an enormous liberation, because it's the liberation from thought. It's the liberation from ego, or the need to be right, or just saying, "I don't know." Some people can't say, "I don't know." They must know. So you can play with that. There's enough presence in you. You can play with it. You can watch those movements when they're still there, and you can play with relinquishing that. They just fall away. Comes with the arising presence. And of course, that's the arising of spaciousness. You did that and that. You are... Oh, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. But there's space. I did? And then you look into it. Did I do that? You see, no, I don't think I did that. That's how you see it. But it's a misinterpretation, because that's what... Or you say, you're right, I did that. And you're free. All reactions, all reactivity in yourself is egoic. And all reaction is always some opposition. Then you go from reaction to response. You respond out of presence to the situation. Jesus used extreme examples to teach this, which is the state of non-reactivity. And he used the extreme of example of, in his parable, of turning the other cheek. Somebody hits you on the cheek. No, the normal reactive pattern is to immediately hit that person back. That's normal. Of course, it's a parable. It's used as a metaphor. And so he says, when somebody hits you on the cheek, you offer the other cheek. It's a very extreme example of non-defensiveness and non-reaction. Not necessarily to be taken literally, perhaps, but it's a parable. Another beautiful parable, which I've told, some of you know it, from Zen Buddhism. The Zen master, with a high reputation, who lived in a town in Japan, was accused by a 16-year-old girl who was pregnant of being the father. So this girl was pregnant and told her parents that the Zen master, whom she had visited some months ago, was the father of her child. The child she was carrying. She told this to her parents. The parents ran to the Zen master, accusing him of having seduced their daughter, of being a false teacher, of being a fraud. And he listened. He said, "You fathered this child, she just told us." And he listened, and they kept talking, and all he would say was, "Is that so? Yes, you are the father of this child." "Is that so?" "Yes." And then the child was born, and the parents didn't want the child, so they brought the baby to the Zen master and said, "Here's the baby, you look after him. We don't want it, it's your child." And the Zen master said, "Is that so?" And so the parents went back home, and the Zen master, nobody would come to see him anymore because he lost his reputation. All he had to do is look after the baby. And he did that because it was there. And he welcomed the form that this moment took. He didn't live through a mind-made self, so a lost reputation didn't become a mental story in his head that he derived his continued sense of identity from. The only fact was, here's the baby. Nobody's coming to see me anymore. There's nobody here, and that's fine. Nobody is not a problem whatsoever. Just there's a baby and empty space. It's beautiful. There's no mind-derived identity which says, all what I've built up, my reputation is gone. My life is in ruins. What did they do to me? They did that to me. Nobody did anything. We just non-reacted, welcomed this moment. A year later, the daughter became more mature and confessed to her parents that the Zen master was not the father, but the boy next door. So the parents ran back to the Zen master and said, "Can you please forgive us? We just realized that you are not the father." And the Zen master said, "Is that so?" And then they said, "Yes, and we'll have the baby back now, please." And he said, "Oh, is that so? All right, here's the baby." Nothing happened. It's an extreme example of a life lived in the state of non-reactivity and the complete absence of drama, which is egoic, in such a life. The others may be playing their drama, but in the surrendered consciousness, there is no drama. It cannot arise. And this is the amazing thing. His life remained clear, simple, totally unproblematic, because his sense of self was not derived from mind-created identifications and stories. His sense of self was derived from presence, the presence of now, the spaciousness of now, the field of now, the unconditioned consciousness. What problem could there be in that? So, through non-reactivity, one could say, to use an old expression, the buck stops here. Otherwise, and this is the end of karma. When there's non-reactivity, karma immediately evaporates. It's only through reactivity, because karma is action, reaction, action, reaction. Through non-reactivity, karma, which is surrender, karma dissolves. It may come at you, human karma. And this is the only way karma can dissolve. It doesn't dissolve through more and more time. It renews itself through time. It's only through the timeless that it becomes dissolved. So that's the power. All the teachings show that. Jesus, in Buddhism, the enormous power that comes with non-reactivity, which is surrender. The end of all drama in your life. How could there be? All right, and so it is. It's this. Whoosh, whoosh. It remains clear, unencumbered by problems. Field of now. And it don't let the little mind tell you that then you become a doormat. I will become a doormat. I don't want to be a doormat. It's not that there is enormous strength and power in that non-reactive state. Totally non-defensive, but enormous strength and power go through you. There's also a story about the Buddha traveling from town to town and village to village, and occasionally he encountered people who abused him because they had certain mental positions, and they would shout at him. He would always, people would ask him, why doesn't this bother you that people are shouting at you and abusing you? And he said, there's nobody here to abuse. They think they're abusing somebody, but there's nobody here. It just passed through him. There was no mind-made entity that where this abuse was received and held. It passed through in the absence of a mind-made sense of self. Somebody shouting, you idiot. There's nobody there to hold on to that. And it passes through. Idiot? Where? Who? So, nothing can prevail against the power of presence. Yes, don't underestimate the momentum that is there in the collective human mind and its patterns. But it's nothing compared to the power of presence. Yes, don't underestimate the madness of the ego, but it is nothing compared to the power of presence. Course in Miracles says, the ego is insane, and do not underestimate the extent of its insanity. And this is very true. It is very insane. Look at human history. Watch the news. Don't want to become more personal, but it's in everyone still, unless it's already dissolved. But they are operating less in you now. Those structures are becoming more less solid. Beginning to, as presence arises, they begin to fade. They still operate, but with less momentum. The same old patterns you will often observe have their momentum, and they still arise in your life, but as the witness is there more and more, the witnessing presence, these patterns have less force to them. So gradually they fade, become transmuted. But just taste. All that is required is just get a taste of the surrendered state, and see the beauty and power that lies in that. So people ask sometimes, how do I get rid of thousands and thousands of years of conditioning, of all the accumulations, all the collective conditioning that you carry inside? And it's all simple. Surrender. And as this transformation happens in you, people around you, you will find, are being affected by that. And others will leave you who are not yet ready. You're no longer interesting to them. You don't participate in the drama anymore. They can't use you anymore. What's the point? They leave you. He's not playing anymore. If you have a partner, then as the shift happens in you, the shift in consciousness, it will frustrate, if it's not yet happened in your partner, it will frustrate those patterns, the conditioned mind patterns, including the pain body in your partner, that need your cooperation to keep themselves going. The reactivity needs something to react against. The pain body needs another pain body to feed on. It needs your reactions. So in the absence of that, there's frustration. And then there could be a shift in your partner. It's happened. It's enough for one partner to enter the surrendered state. And then there's disorientation in the other partner for a while. And then either the openness is there and the shift will happen, or you will separate. But it will be loving. You would separate in love. And it's sometimes the most unlikely people that are suddenly open. And all it requires is to come into your presence. You might say a word or two, and their lives from then on, that's the trigger that awakens that which was already underneath all the mind structures. As somebody wrote to me, whom I met a long time ago at university, he said, "I wish I had never met you. My life would be simple, would be conventional and normal." Of course, he doesn't know that it's not true. He would be very unhappy like everybody else. One more thing about physical conditions, because some of you, I'm told, are having certain physical limitations here. Limitations of the physical body, for some people, have been their only teacher, and some have needed no other teacher but some continuous pain or continuous disability in the body. And it drove them to the point of surrender. The very same condition in other people drove them into more and more egoic contraction and misery and unhappiness. So you can see, you can see one person in a wheelchair who is filled with anger, resentment and bitterness, and you can see another person in a wheelchair, and I have met people, and there's a light shining through their eyes and complete openness and no unhappiness and no misery. Just And even occasionally you might encounter people in India where many people who in the West would be shut away, they are actually visible in the street. So people who may have only one limb or lost several limbs, and occasionally you find that complete this peace in them. It happens. And they smile at you. So the physical limitation then drove them into the state of surrender. If you surrender, otherwise it will drive you into more contraction. I met my brother again after 3 years, my half-brother, at Christmas, and he's now only 32 or 33 years old. And I had observed, I would see him occasionally, how his ego was growing and becoming more and more rigid over the years during his 20s. The roles, complete identification with the roles he was playing, with mental positions, and rigidity setting in. And, well, that's how the ego grows. And then he encountered a serious illness in his late 20s. And he had a very major operation. And then as the result of that operation, he would, for even now, almost every night he wakes up in acute pain, abdominal pain. And so his sleep is interrupted almost every night by acute pain for 1, 2, 3 hours. And that is almost, to some people, that would be called unacceptable. Never getting enough sleep, always this pain.